Good morning dear children. This video is for class 10 science, chapter number 6 life processes, and this is lecture number 8 NCERT solutions. So let's begin with the exercise part of this chapter as in-text questions have been done during the lectures. So the first question of chapter 6 exercise is the kidneys in human beings are a part of the system for A. Nutrition, B. Respiration, C. Excretion, and D. Transportation. So children, for sure the answer is option C, because kidneys, we have studied that kidneys, they filter the blood and they remove the metabolic waste. And what is this process called? Excretion. Question number 2 is the xylem in plants are responsible for A. Transport of water, B. Transport of food, C. Transport of amino acids, D. Transport of oxygen. So children, in plant, xylem tissue is responsible for the transport of water, because the transport of food is done by the phloem tissue, transport of oxygen is done by stomatas, and transport of amino acids is not happening here, because if we take them in the food itself, then these are transferred with the help of phloem only. So option A is the correct option. Question number 3 is the autotrophic mode of nutrition requires carbon dioxide and water, B. chlorophyll, C. sunlight, and D. all of above. So children, we all know that autotrophic mode of nutrition is the nutrition in plants, because they only make their own food. They have the capability to make their own food. So for the purpose of making their own food, they have a process called photosynthesis, and that photosynthesis takes place in the presence of carbon dioxide and water as a raw material. Sunlight is trapped in the chlorophyll, and then this sunlight is being converted into chemical energy. So all these three, carbon dioxide and water, chlorophyll and sunlight, all these three are required for making the food by the plants. So option D is the correct answer. Question number 4 is the breakdown of pyruvate to give carbon dioxide, water and energy takes place in cytoplasm, B. mitochondria, C. chloroplast, D. nucleus. So children, we have studied that when pyruvate is being converted into carbon dioxide, water and energy, so this reaction takes place in the presence of oxygen. And where this reaction happens? In mitochondria. So option B is the correct answer for this question. Then question number 5 is, how are fats digested in our body? Where does this process take place? So although we know that how the fats are digested in our bodies, they are being digested by the lipase enzyme. And where does this process takes place? It takes place in the small intestine. Now let us have a brief look on the answer of this question, that how we are going to write the answer. So children, to answer this question, we know that fat digestion in stomach is poor, as the gastric lipase is a weak enzyme. So lipase, which is present in the gastric glands, which is secreted by the gastric glands in stomach, is very weak, and it cannot digest the fat present in the stomach because acidic medium is provided in the stomach. So it's not able to work on the fats and it is not able to digest them. So most of the fat digestion occurs in small intestine, where the acidic medium has been removed by the bile secretions, and what is done? Fat is first emulsified. Emulsified means the big globules of the fats or the big droplets of the fat is broken down into small drops with the help of bile salts. Bile salts are secreted by liver and they are acted upon. Now these emulsified fats are acted upon by pancreatic and intestinal lipase. Pancreatic lipase acts on them and it makes them convert them into fatty acid and glycerol, which is the complete digestive part of the fat. So this is how you are going to write the answer of this question. Question number 6 is, what is the role of saliva in the digestion of food? So to answer this question, we have saliva, that how saliva helps in the digestion of food. So children, we know that the first function of saliva is it moists the food for easy crushing, so that the food can be easily crushed by the teeth and tongue, and it can be converted into a fine paste so that it can be moved inside the esophagus or the further tract of the alimentary canal. Then second reason is that it carries the amylase enzyme. Amylase is an enzyme which helps in digestion of carbohydrates. So only a small portion of carbohydrate is being digested over here with the help of amylase present in saliva. So this amylase converts carbohydrates into simpler sugars. For example, maltose, sucrose, fructose and lactose. So these can be the forms of when the carbohydrates are being converted into simpler sugar, but still more digestion is required. That will take place in the small intestine. Question number 7 is, what are the necessary conditions for autotrophic nutrition and what are its byproducts? So, the necessary conditions for autotrophic nutrition are the presence of sunlight, so that the water can be split into hydrogen and oxygen. Then we have, the plant should have the chlorophyll, which is capable of trapping the sunlight into it. So if chlorophyll is not present, sunlight will not be trapped. So chlorophyll absorbs the sunlight. Then carbon dioxide, which gets reduced into the carbohydrates with the help of hydrogen. Another requirement is the water, which divides into hydrogen and oxygen, and then hydrogen gets attached with the CO2 to get it reduced. And this is how the photosynthesis takes place. That the chlorophyll traps the sunlight, H2O splits in H and O, that is hydrogen and oxygen with the help of this sunlight, and then this hydrogen, which has been formed by the dissociation of H2O, reduces the CO2 into carbohydrates, which is the form of the food that the plants make. Now, what are the byproducts of this reaction? We know that the reaction is CO2 plus H2O gives C6H12O6. This is glucose. Plus we get oxygen and water vapors. So there is a need to balance this equation. So as you all know that how to balance this equation, so you can do it very well. So here we will have 6O2 and 6H2. Now the byproducts, and this reaction happens in the presence of sunlight, which is absorbed by the chlorophyll. So this is the main product and these two are the byproducts. So we can say that the products formed in this reaction are carbohydrate or glucose, oxygen and water vapors. Question number 8 is, what are the differences between aerobic and anaerobic respiration? Name some organisms that use anaerobic mode of respiration. So children, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. These two are the pathways obtained by the pyruvate, which is a 3-carbon molecule, to get oxidized and produce energy. So these two types of respirations having the following differences. The first difference can be on the basis of their names. Aerobic means the respiration that occurs in the presence of oxygen. So aerobic respiration occurs in the presence of oxygen. And anaerobic, as the name suggests, it happens in the absence of oxygen. Then second difference can be that we have seen that when pyruvate get oxidized, then here in the aerobic respiration, when the presence of oxygen is there, then complete oxidation of pyruvate occurs, and the byproduct are formed are carbon dioxide, water vapors. Then we have here that the pyruvate is not getting finally oxidized. It will obtain either some intermediate 3 molecule or 2 molecule state. So that is called as partial oxidization. So aerobic respiration, complete oxidization occurs, whereas anaerobic respiration, partial oxidization occurs. Aerobic respiration, when aerobic respiration occurs, large amount of energy is released. And that's why aerobic respiration is more efficient, because it produces more amount of energy. Whereas the anaerobic respiration, only a small amount of energy is released. If we talk about the byproducts formed, then here in aerobic respiration we get the less, or you can say if the complete oxidation is occurring, then what is happening? Less toxic or very less harmful byproducts are formed. But here, as we know that ethanol or lactic acid are the byproducts which are more toxic. Then another differences can be that where this reaction occurs. It occurs partly in cytoplasm and partly in mitochondria. But this anaerobic respiration occurs only in cytoplasm. One more difference can be that here whatever the byproducts we obtain are inorganic. So they are less harmful, but here the organic byproducts formed are generally toxic. So these were all the differences in aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Then the next question is question number 9. How are the alveoli designed to maximize the exchange of gases? So children, we all know that alveoli are small pouches or sac-like structures present in the lungs, and they are at the end part of the respiratory system. There are about 300 million alveoli occur inside each lung. So you can imagine that how large this number is, that how many alveoli or small sac-like structures we have inside our lungs. And each of the alveoli provides a large surface area for gas exchange to take place. So very large surface area is provided by the alveoli. Then one more advantage of them is thin walls and the abundance of blood capillaries around them. That makes the gas exchange more easy. So all these are the properties that alveoli have, which makes it a space where more gas exchange can take place. Next question is question number 10. What would be the consequences of a deficiency of hemoglobin in our bodies? So anemia is the deficiency of hemoglobin. In anemia, blood is unable to carry the amount of oxygen required by the body because the availability of hemoglobin in our blood is very less, and we know that hemoglobin is having the affinity for oxygen. It can transport the oxygen inside the body because it takes the oxygen from the lungs. So if less availability of hemoglobin is there, that means the amount of oxygen required by the body will not be fulfilled. That means the oxidation of food is not happening properly, or it is not having the sufficient amount of energy to do various works. So lesser energy is available to the body, and the person who is suffering from anemia will feel weak because it is having less energy, pale, lethargic, and unable to perform many of the physical activities. Might have heard many of the people, those who say that we should eat greeny vegetables or green leaf vegetables because they have the iron content in them, which increases the hemoglobin inside the blood, and that can fight with the anemia. So student, you should also eat green leafy vegetables more and more. The next question is question number 11. Describe double circulation of blood in human beings. Why is it necessary? So children, while understanding the circulatory system of our body, we have understood that what is double circulation. Double circulation means the circulation which is happening. Circulation of what? Blood. So blood that circulates in our complete body enters the heart twice during its one cycle. And which kind of complete cycle is there? We have the lungs, from where the blood takes up the oxygen and becomes oxygenated. Now this blood is given to the left atrium with the help of pulmonary veins. Then this left atrium contracts and gives the blood to the left ventricle. Then blood goes from left ventricle to aorta. Then from this aorta, which is the largest artery, it circulates the oxygenated blood throughout the body. So this is just one time enter and exit of the blood from the heart. Then what happens? Then the arteries, aorta divides into arteries. Arteries divide into capillaries. And in capillaries, the gas exchange takes place between the blood and the cells. Cells, they dump the CO2 in it, and then capillaries, they come out as venules or veins. So now we have the veins that combine together and form the superior and inferior vena cavas, and they take up the deoxygenated blood from the upper part and from the lower part both. So the blood comes into right atrium, right upper chamber of the blood. So here also again the blood is entering into the heart. Now right atrium contracts and blood goes to the right ventricle. Right ventricle contracts and blood goes to the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery takes the deoxygenated blood into the lungs back for the oxygenation to occur. So you notice that here this complete cycle is starting from the heart, come back to the heart, starting from the lungs with the oxygenated blood, ending up at the lungs with the deoxygenated blood. This makes one complete cycle of the blood circulation. In this duration, the heart enters twice the heart, and that's why this circulation is called as double circulation. I've also told you that the double circulation can be divided into two categories: systemic and pulmonary. So when the blood starts from the lungs, enters into the left part, goes to the aorta and then to the blood, the cells of the body. Then this systemic circulation. Then when the veins, they get the deoxygenated blood into right atrium and then ventricle, then goes back to the lungs. This portion of the circulation is called as pulmonary circulation. And why this double circulation is important? Because due to this double circulation, the deoxygenated blood enters only in the right part of the heart, and oxygenated blood enters the left part of the heart. So this way we are keeping the deoxygenated blood and oxygenated blood separate, which provides the more efficiency of oxidation, and it is more efficient way of keeping the two different types of bloods in different vessels. As we are a complex organism, so we need more amount of energy, but if this blood gets mixed up, then this efficiency will decrease, and that's why it's very helpful that we are having the double circulation in our body. Question number 12 is, what are the differences between the transport of material in xylem and phloem? So we have to differentiate the transport happening in xylem and transport by phloem. So let us see what are the differences between the two. First, on the basis of components they carry. So xylem carries water and minerals, whereas the phloem carries the nutrients. Then direction. Xylem moves or transports only in one direction. So it is unidirection, and that too upward. Whereas the transport in phloem can be upward or downward, both the directions. As there is a need to transport the food or the nutrients to all parts of the plant, whether it is downward or upward. Now, what kind of force makes the water and mineral move into xylem, or how the transportation occurs, which forces are responsible? So here just physical forces are responsible, and here what happens that with the help of transpiration we create a suction because of which the water and minerals moves in the xylem tissue. And here what happens, that some of the chemical reactions they take place, and the energy which is stored in the form of ATP is spent by these cells. Now here in the transportation by xylem, there is no active component present, but here there are active components present during the uploading and deloading. Because what is happening? The food is taken up by the phloem tissues from the place where it was stored, and then it is being transferred, or it can also happen that wherever the food is prepared in the leaves of the plant. From here the food has to be transported somewhere else, either for the need of the plant or for the storage purpose. So the food is taken up here as an active component. It is being transported and it is kept on some other place. So here we have the active component, and what is that? That is the nutrients. Then we have the fifth difference on the basis of the channels they have, that by which path the xylem is transporting the water and minerals. So here xylem tissue is having four main types, which are xylem fiber, xylem parenchyma, tracheids and vessels. Among all them, parenchyma is the living cell, whereas others are dead. Like tracheids and vessels, these are non-living cells or non-living channel obtained by the water and minerals to get transported. Phloem is also having four types of cells: sieve tubes. Then we have the companion cells. Then phloem parenchyma and phloem fibers. Among all these, only phloem fibers are non-living, but rest are the living cells. So here in the transport, when we are talking about the transport in xylem, we are having most of the non-living cells, and here we have the most of the living cells to transport the material. Question number 13 is, compare the functioning of alveoli in lungs and nephrons in kidney with respect to their structure and functioning. So children, here we have the alveoli and nephrons. So here we have the alveoli and the nephrons. So first difference can be on the basis of their shape, because we have to talk about their structure and their functions both. So if we talk about the shape of the alveoli, so they are generally rounded or polyhedral. Whereas the nephrons are elongated tubules. Second difference is on the basis of components. So alveoli is a single entity, alveolus, and nephron is having the components Malpighian capsule and the renal tubule. So the renal tubule is further having three parts. So we have the Malpighian capsule, or you can also say that glomerulus cluster of capillaries and the Bowman's capsule, together they are called as Malpighian body. Along with this, we have the renal tubule, which are composed of PCT, loop of Henle and DCT. Now if we talk about the blood capillaries, so here in the case of alveoli we have same, the blood capillaries are same all over the alveoli, but in case of nephrons we are having different capillaries. For example, we have the glomeruli, which is the special capillary cluster inside the Bowman's capsule. Other than this, we are also having different capillaries which are surrounding the rest part of the nephron, which are called as peritubular. Peri means which is around the other part of it. Now what kind of material they are dealing with? So here alveoli deals with the respiratory gases. Generally oxygen, carbon dioxide. Here the nephron deals with the body fluids. Now on the basis of function, they perform the exchange of gases, whereas the nephrons, they bring they filter or separate the metabolic waste and remove it out from the body. Now, what is this process? Here, diffusion occurs for the gas exchange. Gas exchange takes place with the help of diffusion. And here, the urine formation is the main process, which have the three main steps: ultrafiltration, then tubular or selective reabsorption, then tubular secretion. So these were all the differences between the alveoli and the nephrons. And this is the complete NCERT solutions of the exercise of this chapter. And the homework of today's lecture is that you have to do a post-text assignment 1, which is having 15 questions in it, and it will be available on EdQuark website. So get your homework from EdQuark website and do it in your fair notebook. I'll see you in the solution video of the assignment 1. Till then, take care and goodbye.